Dear students, in our last two modules, we had studied about the preamble and the constitution. And in this module, we will be studying about the fundamental rights and duties. The learning outcome of this module will be, after studying this module, you will be able to learn about your basic rights, understand fundamental duties as a citizen, know how courts have interpreted these rights, discuss hand in hand the basic laws which are instrumental for the governance of the nation. So we'll start with an introduction, Indian Constitution and fundamental rights. Fundamental rights, which are basically the human rights available to each human being, are envisaged in Indian Constitution. There are only few of the human rights and not all. All such rights are enforceable through the courts of law. It guarantees civil liberties such that all Indians can lead their lives in peace and harmony as citizens of India. These include individuals' right common to most liberal democracies such as equality before law, freedom of speech and expression and peaceful assembly, freedom to practice religion and the right to constitutional remedies for the protection of civil rights by means of writs such as habeas corpus. The fundamental rights are defined as basic human freedoms which every Indian citizen has the right to enjoy for a proper and harmonious development of personality. Fundamental right, essentially human rights that are offered to every citizen irrespective of caste, race, creed, place of birth, religion or gender. The fundamental rights were included in the Constitution because they were considered essential for the development of every citizen and to preserve human dignity. These are equal to freedom and these rights are essential for personal good and the society at large. Now, various types of fundamental rights. Types of fundamental rights. The right to equality and equal protection of laws. The right to freedom. The right against exploitation. The right to religion. Cultural and educational rights. The right to constitutional remedies. First, we'll start with right to equality. Right to equality, Article 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18 of Indian Constitution deal with right to equality. First, equality before law and equal protection of laws. Then second is social equality and equal access to public areas. Third is equality in matters of public employment. Fourth, abolition of untouchability. Fifth, abolition of titles. The society cannot discriminate any of the Indian citizen on the basis of their caste, creed, color, sex, gender, religion or place of birth. All equals be treated equally. Every person shall have equal access to public places like museums, temples, parks and theatres. Practice of untouchability is an offence and anyone doing so is punishable by law. Special provisions may be made for the advancements of any socially backward class or scheduled castes or scheduled tribes. Next is right to freedom. Article 19, 20, 21 and 22 of Indian Constitution deal with right to freedom. We have different kinds of freedoms. Freedom of speech and expression. Second, freedom to assemble peacefully without arms. freedom to form associations or unions, freedom to move freely throughout the territory of India, freedom to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India, freedom to practice any profession. Now, the explanation: freedom of speech and expression which enable an individual to participate in public activities subject to reasonable restriction is placed in Article 9, subclause 2 of Indian Constitution. Then, second, freedom to form associations or unions on which the state can impose reasonable restrictions by the state. Next is freedom to form associations or unions on which the state can impose reasonable restrictions. Next, freedom to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India which is also subject to reasonable restrictions by the state. Freedom to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business. Next is right against exploitation. Right against exploitation is covered under Article 23 and 24 of Indian Constitution. Next is right to religion. Article 25, 26, 27 and 28 of Indian Constitution deals with right to religion. According to the Constitution, all religions are equal before the state and no religion shall be given preference over the other. State does not have any religion. Indian state does not have any religion. Citizens are free to preach, practice, propagate any religion of their choice. Right to freedom of religion provides religious freedom to all citizens of the country. The objective of this right is to sustain the principle of secularism in India. All religions are equal before the state and no religion shall be given preference over the other. Citizens are free to preach, practice and propagate any religion of their choice. No person shall be compelled to pay taxes for promotion of a particular religion. Next type of rights which we are having are cultural and educational rights. Article 29 and 30 of Indian Constitution deals with cultural and educational rights. Any community which has a language and a script of its own has the right to conserve it and also to develop it. All minorities, religious or linguistic, can set up their own educational institution to preserve and develop their own culture. As India is a country of many languages, religions and cultures, the Constitution provides special measures to protect the rights of the minorities. Now, right to constitutional remedies. Right to constitutional remedies empowers the citizens to move to the court of law in case of any denial of the fundamental rights. This is the most important right of all the 6 rights. It empowers the citizens to move to court of law in case of denial of any of the fundamental rights. The right is enforceable through writs provided in the Constitution itself, writs like habeas corpus, etc. Now, critical analysis of the fundamental rights. critical analysis, freedom of speech and expression is subjected to certain reasonable restrictions and are not absolute. Employment of child labor in hazardous job environments has been reduced, but their employment even in non-hazardous jobs, including their prevalent employment as domestic help, violates the spirit and ideals of the Constitution. Fundamental rights, we have certain fundamental duties also. Now we'll go through the 10 fundamental duties. Indian Constitution has given us certain duties also. So the 10 fundamental duties are: first, to abide by the Constitution and respect ideals of Constitution and institutions like the national flag and the national anthem. Second, to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. Third, to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of the country. Fourth, to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Fifth, to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood among all the people of India, linguistic and regional or sectional diversities, to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. Sixth, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. Seventh, to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Eighth, to develop the scientific temper, humanism, spirit of inquiry and reform. Ninth, to safeguard public property and abjure violence. 10th, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. Next is Charter on Human Rights. What is the meaning of rights? Rights literally mean those freedoms which are essential for personal good as well as the good of the community. Rights are described as our own demands needed for our own development. These, when recognized by the society and state, become the rights. Now we'll go to the Charter on Human Rights. The Charter of Human Rights was adopted by the United Nations on 10th December 1948, known as Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948. According to this, all human beings are born free and are equal in dignity and rights. No one can be deprived of the right of life, liberty and security. The government has the duty to protect these rights and promote respect for them. The United Nations emphasizes universal acceptance and recognition of these rights by all nations. 10th December is declared as Human Rights Day all over the world. India has incorporated these provisions in its constitution in the chapter on fundamental rights. Article 12, which gives the definition of state. In this part, unless the context otherwise required, the state includes the governmental and Parliament of India and the government and the legislature of each of the states and all local or other authorities within the territory of India or under the control of the Government of India. Next is Article 13. It deals with laws inconsistent with or in derogation of the fundamental rights. All laws in force in the territory of India immediately before the commencement of this constitution, insofar as they are inconsistent with the provisions of this part, shall to the extent of such inconsistency be void. The state shall not make any law which takes away or abridges the rights conferred by this part, and any law made in contravention of this clause shall, to the extent of contravention, be void. In this article, unless the context otherwise required. Law includes any ordinance, order, bylaw, rule, regulation, notification, custom or usage having in the territory of India the force of law. Laws in force includes laws passed or made by a legislature or other competent authority in the territory of India before the commencement of this constitution and not previously repealed, notwithstanding that any such law or any part thereof may not be there in operation either at all or in particular areas. Nothing in this article shall apply to any amendment of this constitution made under Article 368. Now, what is the significance of human rights to the citizens? We'll deal with these. Significance of fundamental rights to the citizen. These fundamental rights help not only in protection but also the prevention of gross violations of human rights. They emphasize on the fundamental unity of India by guaranteeing to all citizens the access and the use of same facilities irrespective of the background. Some fundamental rights apply for the persons of any nationality, whereas others are available only to the citizens of India. The right to life and personal liberty is available to all people, and so is the right to freedom of religion. On the other hand, freedoms of speech and expression and freedom to reside and settle in any part of the country are reserved to citizens alone, including non-resident Indian citizens. The right to equality in matters of public employment cannot be conferred to overseas citizens of India. Fundamental rights primarily protect individuals from any arbitrary state actions, but some rights are enforceable against individuals. For instance, Constitution abolishes untouchability and also prohibits begar. These provisions act as a check both on state action as well as the action of private individuals. However, these rights are not absolute or uncontrolled and are subjected to reasonable restrictions as necessary for the protection of general welfare. They can also be selectively curtailed. The Supreme Court has ruled that all provisions of the Constitution, including fundamental rights, can be amended. However, the Parliament cannot alter the basic structure of the Constitution. Features such as secularism and democracy fall under this category. Since the fundamental rights can only be altered by a constitutional amendment, their inclusion is a check not only on the executive branch but also on the Parliament and the state legislatures. Now, we'll conclude with the summary. Before we conclude, I'll just repeat that in the last lectures, we have already studied about the preamble and the constitution. In this, what we have learned so far in this module, we have learned about the following points. First, what do we mean by the term fundamental rights? What are the 10 fundamental rights stated by the Constitution to the citizens of India? And how are these rights helping in providing the citizens with the peace and harmony?